The familiar theme of livingpianos.com, your online piano store, with a great subject today, one that's incredibly important for any of you pianists out there, which is the fundamental importance of arm weight for producing a good tone on the piano. Now, you might wonder what I'm talking about arm weight. I mean, your arms are your arms. What is this weight we're talking about? Before I get into that, let's give a little background about the piano. Of course, is a unique musical instrument because the original instrument of all time was what? Think about it. What is the first musical instrument ever? The first musical instrument is obviously the human voice, and every other instrument imitates the human voice to one capacity or another. Obviously, wind instruments, the breath and the flow of the phrase, the natural progression from note to note, the smoothness of the line is intrinsic, not just to vocal performance, but also all wind instruments. Now, what else? What other instruments get into the act? Well, obviously stringed instruments, particularly bowed instruments, that's the analog of the breath. Well, what do we have on the piano? Well, you might think that since phrases naturally ebb and flow, just like ocean waves, that you could just calculate from note to note, louder and louder, and then softer and softer. And guess what? If you try that, you're going to end up with a calculated performance. No surprise there, is there? So the secret of using the arm weight is the fact that you can transfer smoothly from note to note, sustaining the same weight, and that weight can grow towards the middle of the phrase and diminish towards the end of the phrase. So, for example, I'm going to start with the Chopin B-flat minor nocturne, the very beginning, and I'm going to play it, and I'm going to try to calculate each note of the phrase to try to create a line by having progressively louder and softer notes that I carefully craft. And see if it creates a line, and then we'll try the other way of using the continuous arm weight that ebbs and flows with the phrase. So I did everything I could to craft the line based upon my musical inclinations. But indeed, it was a calculated performance because that's exactly what I was doing. Well, what would happen now instead of doing that? You know, I'm actually also a French hornist, and so I understand the concept of using the breath. And I'm going to use that same concept except with the arm weight supporting the natural weight of the arm. It's not pushing down more. It's just supporting the weight of the arm with your finger and let it just lean into it. Lean more towards the middle of the phrase and less towards the end of the phrase to create this kind of sound. Now, it's a completely different playing experience, I've got to admit, because there's something incredibly engaging about imposing upon the phrase this idea of the breath, the continuity, and letting the notes flow naturally with that overarching concept. It's a completely different type of playing. I'm interested in your impressions of what you've just heard, and any of you who have different opinions or techniques to achieve the same thing in maybe a different way. Love to hear from you. And once again, this is Robert Estrin here at livingpianos.com. Thanks so much for joining me.